Hi, everybody. Uh, Welcome to another podcast. I wanted to talk about a couple of things today, and I want to just regulate it to just one because there's just so much going on that unfortunately um, they all have to be discussed. But one of the things that I really want to touch upon is the circus that happened yesterday in the congressional hearing of Kristi Noem, who once again proved that she's an incompetent leader, a pretty horrible person, and a liar, and like Bondi, protecting her boss, which is Donald John Trump. And there were many times in the hearing where things got testy as usual. But the interesting thing that I've noticed about the hearings is between Republicans and Democrats, where the questioning is very, very different. Actually, I want to correct myself in saying these were Senate hearings, but even so, it still counts. But Democrats are asking the very, very tough questions, the tough questions that need to be asked. And then you have the Republicans who are doing the opposite, which is praising her for a job well done, while others are using it to blame Democrats for bills being stalled in Congress. Namely, Lindsey Graham, who decided to use his time not to ask any questions whatsoever, but to basically blame the Democrats for what's going on, praising Kristi Noem for the work, but saying that it's the Democrats that aren't letting her continue the work because they have no money for the Coast Guard or something like that. Oblivious to the fact of why the Democrats won't fund DHS without the reforms, but just saying it's the Democrats' fault for a lot of different things. But it's also Lindsey Graham who convinced Donald Trump to go to war with Iran. And more on that later. And that's actually coming from Politico, but more on that later. I just want to give some takeaways from the hearing yesterday, from what I was able to watch. Senators had grilled Noem about her early descriptions of two U.S. citizens who were killed by federal officers in Minneapolis. Her agency's use of administrative warrants to search homes and private property, her use of executive jets, and whether immigration officers will be deployed to polling places ahead of. And as usual, instead of answering those questions about Minnesota, Noam and as I said, a couple of GOP senators used it to criticize Democrats for the ongoing partial shutdown of the DHS in a time of heightened security. But while the secretary said the department has started to revet some migrants in the wake of the U.S. attacks on Iran over the weekend, she offered no specifics about possible threats as a result. So here's the thing. It's not the Democrats refusing to fund the DHS. And as usual, blaming the Democrats for the partial shutdown. But here's the thing. Has anybody noticed that for each shutdown we've had, it happened under Trump? Under Trump's first term, there was a shutdown. Under the second term, there was a shutdown, with the longest being for 42 days. And now with this partial shutdown, it's the Republicans' fault as well. That's happening under Trump. Have you noticed that? There was no shutdown under Joe Biden. There was no shutdown under Obama. Do you ever notice that? And the Republicans, and you can blame the Democrats all you want, but guess who's in charge of the government? The Republicans. They control the House, they control the Senate, and they control the White House. And so anything that happens in this United States government, whether or not you want to believe it, it falls under the Republicans, not the Democrats. And they're painting this as the Democrats refuse to fund the DHS, which is basically gaslighting because they never said that. What they said was, we will fund DHS, but we need reforms and we need the guarantees. And that's not a reasonable. That's a reasonable request. Because when ICE has been taking the law into their own hands, and you have Kristi Noem saying ICE is just doing their job. Well, first of all, Kristi Noem, you're the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. You're the one that's running things. You're the one that's in charge, right? So anything that's happening is under your watch because you're the one making the decisions. You're the one who can reprimand federal agents for murdering innocent Americans. You're the one who can reprimand agents for deporting the wrong type of people. All the Democrats want for DHS is body cams and to get warrants. Is that so hard to ask? Because, in fact, the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution says you cannot search anybody's premises without a search warrant. You don't have a right to walk into people's property. You don't have a right to go into people's houses and grab people in their underwear, might I add, in the middle of the night because you suspect they might be here illegally. Or you might suspect you're harboring an illegal person. You want to pull them out of their house? Do it the right way. That's all they're asking. And anyway, why would I want to fund? Forget being a Democrat or Republican for a second. Why would I want to fund a department that's murdering people in cold blood in broad daylight? Where's your morals and where's your ethics on that? This has nothing to do with being Republican or Democrat. This has to do with being a decent human being and knowing the difference between right and wrong. So why, would any person with a conscience be okay with funding this? That means you're an accessory to whatever they're doing, and you're okay with it. Let me rephrase that again. This has nothing to do with being a Democrat or a Republican. This has to do with basic decency of human being. This has to do with having morals and ethics. And if you're pulling people out of their home in their underwear in the freezing cold, then you're taking a person's dignity away from them. You're taking away basic human rights. But also violating the Constitution, where it's saying, we are law enforcement, we have a right to do whatever we want. Well, and by that logic, that means that any cop, whether it be New York City or Minneapolis or Boston, that would be saying that any cop could say, we can just we can just barge into your house and do whatever if we suspect something illegal is going on. No, because it's the same thing with my Miranda rights. If a cop arrests you and they failed to read you the Miranda rights, then they have to let you go. Because the Miranda rights is you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say, you have a right to an attorney, you have a right to a lawyer, and anything you say can and possibly be used against you in a court of law. That is what they're required to do. If they don't do that, then they will have to release you because you weren't given your rights. This country has a law. This country has laws. So it's not that. So you can blame the Democrats for your partial shutdown. You can blame the Democrats for your full shutdown. But at the end of the day, GOP, you're the ones that are running the government, not the Democrats, which means it's your responsibility whether you want the job or not. And if you don't want the job, then okay, give it to somebody who actually cares about the government and the people. But it doesn't matter. Whether or not it's Democrats responsible for the shutdown is irrelevant. You are running the House. You are running the Senate. You are controlling the government. Therefore, it is your responsibility. But let's go and ask the question: is why are they refusing the reasonable requests that the Democrats are asking. If cops could wear body cams, then why can't ICE agents? If cops need search warrants to search for a place or an arrest warrant to arrest somebody, then why can't ICE? If ICE is law enforcement, then they should follow the law just like everybody else. Okay? No cop has ever gone to a place without a search warrant. Nobody's ever arrested you without an arrest warrant. And the way that works is you go to a judge and you explain to the judge why you feel you need a search warrant and prove that you need the arrest warrant to arrest somebody. You can't just decide what to do on your own because you are the law, and the law only works differently for everybody else. So blame the shutdown on the GOP. That's fine. Blame the shutdown on the Democrats. That's fine. I'm sorry. But at the end of the day, when you're in charge of the government, it still falls on you. Because what would you do if the Democrats were in control of the government? There was a shutdown, and they started blaming the Republicans for it. How would you feel then? Would everyone say, no, it's not us, it's the Democrats? So anyway, so that's a request. So they asked her a specific question. They asked her, as expected, they brought up Renee Good and Alex Preddy. And Kristi, instead of doing the right thing by answering the question like a normal person, tried to split hairs by claiming she never called Alex Preddy, the man shot and killed by DHS in Minnesota earlier this year, a domestic terrorist, but rather said his actions were an act of domestic terrorism. However, Minnesota Democrat Senator Amy Klobuchar asked Noem if she had anything to say to Preddy's parents after calling their son a domestic terrorist. She said, I can't even imagine what they have gone through in the loss of their son. Noem said, declining for the second time Tuesday when asked to apologize for Preddy's family. Noem then defended her comment, saying, I did not call him a domestic terrorist. I said it appeared to be an instance of domestic terrorism. With Klobuchar responded, I think the parents saw what it was. In the initial aftermath of the killing of Preddy, Noem was asked at a press conference whether she agreed with White House officials calling Preddy a domestic terrorist, and if so, what evidence she had to support a claim. Her response was, when you perpetrate violence against the government because of ideological reasons and for reasons to resist and perpetrate violence, that is the definition of domestic terrorism. She said that at the time, Noem. Shortly after Preddy was killed, Noem also claimed that Preddy had brandished a firearm he was carrying when he had been shot, but video of the killing later contradicted that claim, showing his handgun was not visible until officers had already put their hands on him. The gun was taken off Preddy seconds before he was shot. Earlier during the hearing, she declined to retract her initials of both Preddy and Renee Good, who was also killed in Minneapolis by DHS officers weeks before Preddy. Okay? In an exchange with Democratic Senator Dick Durbin, which I happen to have caught, Noem called both situations tragic and explained that her description of Preddy and Good were based on reports on the ground. Durbin then asked, do you retract these statements identifying these individuals as domestic terrorists? Durbin asked. Her response was, when we have these situations happen, we always offer our condolences to these families. These are tragic situations. We always work to provide the American people with as much information as possible. We're relying on reports on the ground and agents who are there. The Department of Homeland Security came under intense scrutiny over actions in Minneapolis and conflicting accounts provided by senior officials. Durbin then asked, is it so hard to say you were wrong? She said, I absolutely strive to provide factual information. So here you see, she is lying to Senator Dick Durbin. She is not answering the question. And she's saying, based on the facts on the ground. Okay, except for the fact is that she came to the conclusion before there was even an investigation. She decided right then and there. But here's the question I have to ask her. If the GOP, if the Republican Party is so for is pro-life and and for the Second Amendment, which they keep saying they love. So why are they making a big deal about Alex Preddy having a gun, especially when it was legally purchased and registered to him? And if they took the gun from him moments before they shot him, what they should have done, which is what anybody with a brain would have done, was basically take the gun, look at the serial number, and check to see if it was indeed registered to Alex Preddy. Okay, all you got to do is look at the serial number and check it and see who is registered to. Was it registered to Alex Preddy? Was it registered to him? Did he have the gun legally? Otherwise, why did you remove the gun from his pocket? Why did you do that? And the fact on the ground is basically there were a lot of people there, a lot of Minnesotians there, using their phone to videotape everything. Even the murder. You even had one person screaming, "Oh my God, you shot him. Why did you do that? You killed him. Why did you do that?" How come nobody is questioning the fact that ICE agents threw a woman to the ground and beat her senselessly? How come no one is talking about that? Who was she? Why did they throw her to the ground? No one is calling out the fact that they assaulted her and they abused her. So what's worse, the fact that they assaulted her, or that they executed a doctor who was trying to help her? Which one is worse? So she is lying to Senator Durbin and lying to Senator Amy Klobuchar, who represents the state of Minnesota. And Durbin is lying and called her out. He said, "Is it so hard to say you were wrong?" Okay, and this doesn't matter. And yes, he's a Democratic senator, but that's irrelevant. That's irrelevant because that's a simple question to ask. Admit you were wrong. And if she absolutely strives to provide factual information, then what the fuck? Because the fact of the information, because if she's saying, what I think she's saying, if she's saying I absolutely strive to provide factual information, then you've pretty much fucking lied to the Senate, because the facts you gave aren't the facts that everyone else saw. Because if you really want to get technical here, the facts are that Renee Good did not assault anybody. Did not assault anybody. In fact, she was trying to drive away, and she did not run over anybody. And with Alex Peretti, he wasn't brandishing a gun. He never took his gun out. What they said was a gun was in fact his cell phone, and he's heard saying, "Are you okay? Why are you beating her up? Are you okay?" And that is all from cell phone footage from the neighbors, from the neighborhood. So, are the facts of what you've been telling people, or the facts are from what other people shot off their cell phone footage? Because we all saw what happened, both with Renee Good and with Alex Preddy. And the fact of the matter is that MAG is going with the facts, in quotes, that Noem has said. And yes, it is true that Jonathan Ross, the person who murdered Renee Good, was hit by a car and was in the hospital. That is true. And that's what MAG is going with. The problem with that story is that she took two different events and mixed it into one. Because it is true that Jonathan Ross was dragged 100 feet by a car and needed several stitches. That's true. But that happened in June. That happened back in June. And if you're going with the story of internal bleeding, well, okay, fine. I'm no doctor, but if you're internal bleeding, there is absolutely no way in hell you'd be able to drive away from the scene, let alone move. Because if you're internally bleeding, you need to go to the emergency room quickly, and you would have people on the scene to try to fix you. But we saw that Jonathan Ross's own cell phone video footage, which, by the way, he wasn't allowed to do because because you're not allowed to have a gun out while holding a cell phone at the same time. But we saw him walking away after the murder, waving, and then saying call 911 before driving away, which, by the way, is illegal because you shouldn't be leaving a crime scene at all. You should be waiting until the police come. That's number one. Number two, when someone said, I'm a doctor, can I go check on her? And they said no. Well, what the fuck is wrong with you? Have you no basic human decency? Why can't you let somebody check her pulse for vital signs? What do we know? So, and then with Alex Peretti, with this whole thing. So, if you're saying, I absolutely strive to provide factual information, but those are the facts, not the facts that you want to gaslight America with. That's not the facts. The facts aren't as you see fit. The facts are what generally happen. And if you tell a lie long enough and it becomes true, that still doesn't make it true. That's just you believe it because you've been telling a lie so long that everyone believes it. And the fact that you're lying to senators under oath means you're committing perjury, which means you can technically go to jail. And yes, if you lie, and yes, Congress has the authority to hold you in contempt. And Congress has the authority to charge you with crimes. And again, Durbin was saying, is it so wrong to say you are wrong? People respect you more. People respect you more when you say, I'm sorry, and I'm wrong, and I made a mistake. People respect you more. But here's the thing. This isn't just Kristi Noem. This is the entire administration. Pam Bondi, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth. None of them can ever apologize. When in doubt, they'll just say, well, it was Joe Biden's fault. But Joe Biden hasn't been president for over a year. How can you blame somebody for something that is happening when you're in charge? And I'm saying, how can you say, oh, it's Joe Biden's fault? He hasn't been president for over a year, and this is happening on your watch. So how is what's happening on your watch someone else's fault entirely? But they would apologize. And here's a newsflash for you. This administration is having more congressional hearings than Joe Biden's administration had or Obama's administration have. And they already had other hearings of people working in the agency, whistleblowers. And obviously, with Noem's statements, it's contradicting what they already said. And she's not even answering the questions. She's bringing up things. So when Durbin is saying, do you retract these statements identifying these individuals? She's not even retracting it. She's just saying, when we have these situations happen, what situations is she referring to? We have always offered our condolences to these families. These are tragic situations. These are the situations that she created, though. Alex Peretti would be alive today if it wasn't for Kristi Noem. And you can't really take Kristi Noem at her word, because this is the same person that killed her puppy, that killed her goat. And yes, she got called out on that. During the hearing, she got called out on that. And it didn't even faze her, because when they mentioned that she wrote a book on leadership and that she was bragging in her book how she killed her goat and she killed her puppy, and she was bragging about it like she was proud of that, like then you absolutely have no credibility anymore. And this is the same person that is running the Department of Homeland Security. And if you're killing puppies and goats and you have no remorse for it and you have no shame for it and you're bragging about it, and now you're doing the same thing for human beings, well, you shouldn't have been well, she shouldn't have been confirmed to run DHS in the first place, but yes, and she's not. And you're saying when we have these situations and tragic situations, but this is a situation you created. This is a tragedy. This is a tragedy that you could have avoided if these ICE agents weren't trigger happy. And that's what Dick Dummer said. Is it's so hard to say you are wrong, because he's saying you created this tragedy. You created a tragedy that could have been avoided had these agents done their job properly. You cannot say they're law enforcement agents when they don't follow the law themselves. Okay? If anybody is domestic terrorists, it's the ICE agents themselves. Okay? If you want to go that route. And then you have Republicans, and some of the first exchange with Noem came from Republican senators Tom Tillis and John Kennedy of Louisiana. Kennedy confronted Noem about her agency's advertising campaign, which, as the senator pointed out, often probably showcased Noem. ProRepublican reported last year, a very respectable, legitimate website, reported last year that the recipient of a lucrative subcontract was Ben Yoho, the husband of a former DHS spokesperson, Tricia McLaughlin. While Noem argued that bids for the advertisements were properly submitted, Kennedy said his research shows that you did not bid them out, and in one instance chose a company that was formed 11 days before you picked them. And Kennedy did admit that we all have friends who are qualified. He wasn't arguing about that. He added that the $220 million price tag troubles him, especially when Kennedy said Congress is scratching for every penny. I just can't agree on the spending. Noem said she had nothing to do with picking those contractors, and said the president had tasked me with getting the message out to the country on the department's deportation efforts. Yoho's company, the Strategy Group, claimed on social media after the hearing it did not have a contract with DHS directly, but instead obtained a subcontract with Safe America. In total, Yoho's company made $226,137.17 total for 5 film shoots, 45 produced video advertisements, 6 produced radio advertisements. Now, I can't comment on that because I actually don't know the story behind it. But Kennedy is right that when Congress is asking for funding and you're taking all this money for advertising, that money could have been used elsewhere for more important things. And by the way, you don't make the videos that Noem made that's playing in airports and everything. She's in those videos. She had to know something about those videos being made, right? She had to know where the money was coming from, right? Because why would she agree to do a video for her own agency without asking questions about it first? And was she allowed to make those videos? But those videos were basically propaganda videos that are playing in the airport. Because as far as I can recall, those videos never played during any administration. I flew during President Biden's administration. I've been to the airport during President Obama's administration. I don't remember one ever DHS directors making any videos at all. these call it what they are. These were propaganda videos that were inappropriate to be made in the first place, using money that should have been spent elsewhere for more important things. And then Tillis rallied against Noem and the administration's deportation efforts during the hearing, accusing her office of not providing information on immigration efforts in North Carolina and stalling FEMA aid. It's worth noting Tillis is not seeking re-election, so he has nothing to lose here. But he honed on statements Noem made before she was part of Trump's cabinet, including accounts she wrote about it in her memoir of her killing her 14-month-old dog, Cricket. He went there, and a family goat. And Noem wrote in her book that the dog was untrainable, she puts in quotes, and that the goat was nasty and mean. Well, I guess just like Kristi Noem, I guess, Tillis says a 14-month-old dog is basically a teenager in dog years. He goes, you decided to kill that dog because you had not invested the appropriate time and training, and then you have the audacity to go into a book and say it's a leadership lesson about tough choices. And you killed a goat because you said it was behaving badly. You are a farmer. You don't castrate a goat. They behave badly. You should have properly done that before. He's not wrong. Tillis accused DHS of arresting innocent American citizens and highlighted the death of several individuals at the hands of DHS agents. He says to Noem, we're beginning to get the American people to think that deporting people is wrong. Tillis says of what he called Noem's disastrous leadership. It's the exact opposite. The way you're going about deporting them is wrong. Tillis also criticized Noem for failing to admit to a mistake in the shootings of Good and Pretty. Law enforcement needs to learn that you don't protect them by not looking at the facts. Noem said her department had no plans to send immigration enforcement officers to polling locations ahead of this year's midterm elections. But pressed repeatedly by Delaware Senator Chris Coons, Noem declined to rule out the possibility entirely. Coons asked Noem about her comments from Stephen Bannon, a former White House advisor during the first Trump administration, indicating he believed immigration agents should be deployed to polling places. Coons asked point blank, will you rule out the deployment of ICE or CBP to polling places this November? To which she responded, there are no plans to have ICE officers at our polling locations. Coons pressed on to explicitly rule it out. Noem responded, do you plan on illegal aliens voting in our elections? She then again repeated that there were no plans to deploy immigration officers at polling places in November. So Coons is asking the right questions here. Noem is reflecting here by saying, do you plan on illegal aliens voting in our elections? Something that does not happen. And these Republicans are so stupid and so ignorant that they are willing to please their cult master, El Presidente Trump, that they forget the laws. And Trump has this Save America Act for voting that he's pressing the Senate to vote on it, to make it a law. But that we already have voting laws in this goddamn country. And Noem, again, who's the DHS, head of the DHS, should know that that the illegals cannot vote in this country. They cannot register. There is absolutely no way they can. Because they know for a fact that if they attempt to register to vote, they will likely be deported for a federal crime or even a state crime, depending on how you want to look at it. So, this is the question. Do you plan on illegal aliens voting in our elections? Again, there is no proof whatsoever that any illegals vote in the elections. All of these Magites, all these lawyers attempted to prove the fraud in that, and they could not prove it at all. And 6 years later, Donald Trump is going with this lie. Donald Trump is going with this lie that said we have to bring elections back. By the way, if you really want to talk about how delusional and insane Trump is, he's the one that's trying to openly steal the elections. He's the one that's trying to rig the elections by signing executive orders saying we're going to do it with or without the approval of Congress, saying we're going to that we should nationalize the elections, and that pro-Trump lawyers have written up a draft about how you can declare a national emergency to cancel the elections or to nationalize it. But there is no way you can do that. What I'm curious is, what is this national election? What is this national emergency? I'm sorry. Is it the Iran war? Is it the Iran war? Is it to just send ICE to every polling site in America? What is the national emergency that they've concocted? And if you're a lawyer, and if you're a pro-Trump lawyer, then guess what? You're not a lawyer, because no real lawyer would even think about this, because that is not legal. So if you are a Trump lawyer, then give up your law license right now, because you are not a lawyer. It's the same thing with a doctor. If a doctor is committing malpractice, they should not. In fact, today, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. decided to attack Dunkin' Donuts. He decided today he's going to attack Dunkin' Donuts. He wants Dunkin' Donuts to prove that their coffee is actually what's made, if it's real coffee. What is it made in? But here's the thing, RFK Jr. is not a doctor. No medical degree, nothing. So what does he have? So how would he know? Simply put, he knows nothing. And as I'm recording this, I see other things happening, where it says the House Oversight Panel has subpoenaed Pam Bondi over the Epstein files. Excuse me, sorry. And they have that power. And the reason why they're doing that is because she's breaking the law. Because there was a bill, excuse me, there was a bill that was signed by the president to release all of the Epstein files, not just randomly and not deciding, pick and choose. And as the and I don't understand this one. The Attorney General is not supposed to be working for the President of the United States. The Attorney General is supposed to be working for the American people, not the President of the United States. And that's what she's doing. Do you remember how Donald Trump said Joe Biden is weaponizing the Department of Justice against him, and he can't be allowed? Well, isn't that exactly what Donald Trump is doing? Isn't that what Donald Trump is doing? He's weaponizing all branches of government, and he's using his power as the president to go against his enemies, or that he perceives as their enemies. So how can he do that? And so, and then Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse tried to confront her about the plane. And for those who don't know what the story is about this, the plane is a very luxurious plane that has a bedroom, has a bar, has basically the comforts of a first class in a plane. It's a glorified first class / Air Force One luxury jet. And the rumor was that this was for Kristi Noem and Corey Adamowski, who are reported to be having an affair with each other, and this is for her. So, and this is something that is on loan, apparently, and that Kristi and Noem wants the plane to be purchased with tax dollars, through our tax dollars. And so Sheldon Whitehouse asked a very simple question, displaying a picture of the jet, which was first reported by NBC News, of Benjamin inside the jet. NBC reported that the jet cost $70 million. So he asked a very simple question, which was, what kind of deportee justifies being flown out of the country in a luxury jet with a bedroom and accommodations? To which Noem responded that the picture was not accurate and that the jet was being refurbished to get rid of the bedroom and would be used for deportation flights along with executive travel. She said she had been on the plane once. She then said the department has found that in purchasing our aircraft that we will save the taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay, how are you saving money? If it costs you $70 million, right? If the jet costs $70 million, then how is that saving money? It's a very simple question. Right? It's very simple. If the jet is costing $70 million, where are they saving the money? And if you're going to add, if that's true, where's the proof? Where is the proof that it's going to be saving taxpayers money? Kennedy outside criticized Noem by saying, I want to see her succeed, but I'm not going to sit there and watch this kind of spending porn of a cabinet secretary putting herself on TV to the tune of $220+ million without saying something. And the advertisements are still running. They were still running. So where is the money coming from? So it's not just Democrats. Both parties were slamming Noah. They weren't, you have to forget, they are probably regretting that they confirmed her. Okay, they are probably they're probably regretting that, because had they known, but it's like anything, you have no idea what's going to happen until it does, and then it's if you knew then what you know now. But unfortunately, you can't change the past. You can only learn from your mistakes. And Democrats want to know about, as I said, Renee Good. But here's some more. Noem faced a lot of GOP pushback. The hearing was a remarkable display of GOP frustration with Noam, a rare dynamic from lawmakers who are often hesitant to vocally criticize members of the president's cabinet. While many on the panel's Republican senators praised Noam, Tillis hammered the secretary for everything from quashing independent oversight of her department to killing her own dog. He threatened to place a hold on nominees awaiting confirmation until the Department of Homeland Security responded to his queries on immigration. He's like this: I'm giving you a performance evaluation here. I'm not looking for a response, adding that time after time I've been disappointed. Tilla said the DH's Office of Inspector General has accused her of stalling his investigations, and he questioned how bad it has to be for the OIG in this agency to come out and do this publicly. He also said he found her confession in her book regarding her dog distressing, saying she failed to train what was the equivalent of a teenager, and then you have the audacity to go into a book and say it's a leadership lesson about tough choices. On the ad campaign, Kennedy suggests the video was done to promote Noem rather than the Trump agenda and put the president in a terribly awkward spot. He also notes that the contract was awarded to those with long-standing ties to Noem, which is unethical and possibly illegal. And then he asked, the president approved ahead of time you spending $220 million running TV ads across the country in which you are featured prominently? Committee Chair Chuck Grassley, a Republican, also asked about the accounting for special government employees, reminding Noem that even half days worked by those employees count against their 130-day time-limited appointment. Corey Lewandowski, a top vice president, is a special government employee now entering his second year. Noem was pressed repeatedly on domestic claims about Good and Pretty, was repeatedly asked to apologize for accusing both of them of domestic terrorism. She declined at each turn to offer an apology, instead repeatedly offering her sympathy to their families, which is bullshit. Because if you're not going to decline to offer an apology, then why would you express your sympathy to their families when it's all fake and you don't believe it? Because if you truly had any sympathy, you would apologize for branding them domestic terrorists. Senator Amy Klobuchar said one of the most hurtful things they could ever imagine was said by you about their son. She added, Noem made the claim without any evidence of that, and pressed by Klobuchar, Noem denied applying the label of domestic terrorism to Pretty. She goes, ma'am, which is Klobuchar, she's saying it, so ma'am, Noem says, I did not call him a domestic terrorist. I said it appeared to be an incident of domestic terrorism. Klobuchar said, I think the parents saw it for what it was, which I said. And his family said the sickening lies told about our son by the administration are reprehensible and disgusting. At other points during the hearing, Noem defended herself, saying the department was simply trying to provide the public with the best information. Adam Schiff asked whether she had concern about missing the whole country. He goes, you weren't getting out good information. You were making a spurious claim that has caused endless injury to the victims' families on the basis of God knows what. Democrats and Republicans both questioned why Noem would not simply say she was wrong. Tillis asked, why can't we just say we made a mistake? The DHS also took heat from both sides of the aisle over how it was carried out immigration enforcement more broadly. Grassley said he believes immigration enforcement and dignity aren't mutually exclusive, while Tillis said the Trump administration was letting a fixation on deportation guide indiscriminate enforcement. We just want numbers, Tillis said. We want 1,000 a day, 6,000 a day, 9,000 a day, because numbers matter, right? No, they don't matter. Quality matters, not quantity. Quality. And what we've seen is a disaster under your leadership, Ms. Noem, a disaster. Tillis said, noting that the enforcement has routinely swept up U.S. citizens. Senator Cory Booker said later that 170 Americans had been wrongly detained. He said, and I quote, you seem to have no situational awareness whatsoever of some of the most egregious examples of Americans being completely attacked, violated, undermined in accordance with our laws by their own government. And this is what is phenomenal to me, is immigration was your president's number one issue, overwhelmingly popular with the American people. But now it's overwhelmingly unpopular, and it's not because you are deporting dangerous people that everybody here wants out of our country. No, it's because because you're going into our schools, you're terrorizing our children, you're detaining children, you're arresting Americans, you're breaking into our homes, you're terrorizing our streets, you're violating our rights to peacefully protest again and again. Senator Dick Durbin said the DHS has been conducting itself as a paramilitary force. He said you have no right to deploy immigrant agents as a paramilitary force in American cities. Several Democrats also raised that the DHS has been found to have repeatedly violated court orders. Durbin did note that one judge found U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement violated court orders 96 times in January alone. By his count, federal judges across the country have ruled more than 4,440 times that ICE is detaining immigrants illegally. Under questioning from Booker, Noem said she was complying with court orders, which left the senator incredulous. He was saying, you are saying under oath that you do, he said, before pointing to the ruling from Minnesota, finding out either you're utterly incompetent or you are violating laws with impunity. Noem was also roasted by Tillis, who accused her of stifling the reviews of the killings of Good and Pretty and argued her actions. He said back, the investigation is going to prove that Miss Good and Mr. Pretty probably should not have been shot in the face and in the back. Law enforcement needs to learn from that. You don't protect them by not looking after the facts. Not only should the FBI be investigating it, but every single law enforcement agency in that jurisdiction should be invited to it. Officer involved shootings have a formula that we should go through every time, and we're not going through that formula. And then they brought up the shutdown. And then they brought up the shutdown. She used her appearance to plead for the Senate to reach a deal to end the DHS shutdown, which is now in its third week, though, as usual, she did pin the blame on the Democrats. She said in an opening statement more than 100,000 dedicated DHS employees are once again being asked to work without pay for the third time in just 5 months. The latest Democrat-led shutdown of DHS is reckless. It's unnecessary and it undermines the American national security and it harms the men and women who work at DHS and their families. Critical national security missions, including border security, immigration enforcement, aviation security, disaster response, cybersecurity, and the protection of critical infrastructure, are all being strained. Durbin, however, argued the administration was doing plenty to harm national security on its own. As he continued saying, he said, while Republicans claim the DHS shutdown is putting us at risk, the reality is this administration has engaged in mass layoffs of career national security officials and diverted many others from protecting the homeland with the president's mass deportation campaign. He said, adding that Noem still has an unprecedented amount of appropriated funds, more than the United States Marine Corps. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, the Democrat from Rhode Island, said Democrats were willing to fund the TSA and other essential agencies as negotiations over immigration enforcement ensue. He said, it is the administration that is holding those agencies hostage in order to extract additional funding for ICE and CBP. That is our quite clearly stated position, he said. So, as you see, nobody here in the administration, in the Congress and the Senate, either Republicans or Democrats, are happy with Noem. They're basically calling out her bullshit. They're calling out her gaslighting. They're calling out her incompetence. And they're calling out the fact that she killed a dog and a goat, and then had the audacity to write a book about leadership in that book that probably ended up in the bargain bin within 2 weeks. And once again, blaming the Democrats for the shutdown. But again, the GOP controls the Congress. The GOP controls the Senate. The GOP is controlling the White House. The GOP is telling the Democrats, go fuck yourself. We don't want your reforms. That's what they're doing. They took and here's the reality check. They took that disgusting, beautiful bill. They took the disgusting big bill, cut SNAP, cut Medicaid, took it away from billions of Americans. Why? So they can fund things like the DHS, fund things like TSA. And at this point, when you have both parties actually agreeing on the same stuff, you know there's a problem. MAGA won't tell you that because they think Noem is doing a terrific job taking away the criminals. Except when you tell them they're deporting our own citizens, and they're saying, no, they're not. So who are you going to? You're not. I say, okay, can you prove it? And what constitutes somebody committing the worst of the worst? When Donald Trump said he was going to arrest the criminals who are the worst of the worst, what does that mean? We're going to deport the worst of the worst. Rapists? Murderers? Pedophiles? Okay, fine. But you pardon all of them. Sir, Trump, you pardon all of them. You're protecting the pedophiles because you yourself are one. You are committing murder by the Iranian war. Blood is on your hands. We have no idea why you went to Iran. What was the reason you went and attacked Iran? Give me a reason. You didn't tell the American people what your goal is. All I see it's doing is oil prices are going up now because of you. The stock market is going down because of you. And people can go to Israel or even leave Israel because it's too dangerous. So how are you putting America first exactly when you just made it more dangerous for people? You said on your campaign, we're going to lower costs of eggs and gas and everything. Gas is now a little over $3 per gallon. That's a lot of money for gas, and I don't drive, but even I know that that's a lot of money. For every cause, there's a reaction. For every action, there's a reaction. And for every action, there is a consequence. And if your base is saying, oh, well, this is good, how is it good? And then they're all bitching, oh, my oil is, I'm paying a lot of money for my gas. It's Biden's fault. Fuck you. No, it's not Biden's fault. How is it Biden's fault that you went into Iran? How is it his fault that you went into Iran? And all of these Magites will support Donald Trump no matter what happens. No matter what happens, they will go in there and say he's a genius. In 2011, Donald Trump said this. Our president, he was referring to Obama, by the way, when he said it. He said, our president will start a war with Iran because he has absolutely no ability to negotiate. He's weak and he's ineffective. Who knew that he was talking about himself? Who knew that he was talking about himself? Donald Trump has no ability to negotiate. He doesn't negotiate at all. He's ineffective and he's weak. So who knew that Donald Trump was foreshadowing? He literally came out and said this in 2000 about Obama. Our president will start a war with Iran because he has absolutely no ability to negotiate. He's weak and he's ineffective. But in fact, he was actually talking about himself. And they basically, and Iran was always a problem. I will admit Iran was always a problem, but there is no evidence that there was any imminent threat to us. There was no evidence whatsoever. So exactly why are we in Iran now bombing the shit out of them? Why? Why are we sending boots to the ground? Why are we sending soldiers unnecessarily to Iran? What is the goal here? What is the end goal? What is the plan? Is he making it up as he goes along? Is this another one of his delusional things? Or is this simply a distraction from the Epstein files and the election? Because none will go away. As I just said, the House just subpoenaed Bondi for those files. And elections won't disappear because by law they are going to happen, whether Trump likes it or not, as we saw yesterday in Texas. And it's because of Donald Trump that James Taralico, an unknown, became a household name overnight because Brandon Carr told Colbert, you can't interview him because of some equal law that everyone has to give the same to every candidate. So in reality, James Tallarico won last night in the Texas primary for Democratic senator and beat Jasmine Crockett because of Donald Trump. Nobody ever heard of James Taralico outside of Texas. So in effect, Brandon Carr's stupidity made him a household name overnight. So I'm convinced that he won out of spite to Trump. And Jasmine Crockett may have won easily if it wasn't for Tallarico. But Jasmine Crockett took it like a dignified person, conceded, and said she's going to endorse Tallarico and support his campaign and help him where he might need help, because that's the right thing to do. So, in conclusion on this, we're in a war that Americans do not want, and they took polls and only 20% approve of this war. Most people do not. And we still don't know why he's in Iran. We have no idea. Except Pete Hegseth saying, and he was probably joking when he said it, was this war could last 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. It'll last as long as we possibly need to get it done. To get what done, that he won't say. But here's another thing. Didn't Donald Trump say during his campaign, there will be no new wars during my life, during my presidency? I am the president of peace. I've ended 8 wars, make that 9 wars now. Did he not say he will not start any new wars? Did he not say he would end the Ukraine war in 24 hours? And all these years later, we still have that Ukraine war going on. And he's starting a war with Iran. Not only did he start a war with Iran, but also Venezuela. And his followers believe this like it's like, yeah, you can believe Trump. Trump would never lie to us. Believe the opposite of whatever Trump says. He said he would start new wars, and yet here we are in Iran, but we have no idea why. And we as Americans demand an explanation, since our tax dollars are going to fund this war, which is probably like Vietnam all over again, because we should not have been in the Vietnam War. In fact, we did not win that war, if anything. We lost that war. We never should have been involved in that war. But here we are. And between that and Kristi Noem taking from all the sides, it was like a gangbang at the congressional hearing yesterday. It was like, in the Senate hearing, it was like a gangbang. Everybody gangs up on you, and you don't like it. And you know that when both parties are saying the same thing, and when both parties are angry with you and are calling you out and basically saying you're a liar and you're an incompetent moron and you're inept, and you're telling you that on national television, well, you got humiliated. Then you are humiliated. And not only was this first time for her, this is the second time, because she had to face a congressional hearing over the same thing, and now a Senate hearing. And on both accounts, she was humiliated on both accounts on national television. And not only was she humiliated, but so was Donald Trump, because it's Donald Trump who actually nominated her. And now we found out that it's Howard Lutnick's turn in the hot seat. And we all know how that's going to go. We all know that Epstein files are going to be brought up. And we all know he's likely going to do the same thing that Pam Bondi did, the same thing Kristi Noem did, lie under oath. And we all know this. So why do they hold these hearings? Well, so the public can actually see what happens. And because then they can use it against them. And the same thing with Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton said the smartest thing. She actually threw every Republican under the bus, and then threw Donald Trump and Melania under the bus, saying, why am I here? Why am I here? You should be interviewing Donald Trump. You should be interviewing Melania Trump, since their names appear in the Epstein files the most. Since Donald Trump's name appears in the Epstein files more than anyone else, you should question him. Why am I here? Same thing with Bill Clinton. The only difference between Bill Clinton is that he actually admitted. He said, yes, I'm in the files. Yes, I was in a hot tub. Yes, but I never had anything to do with the island or anything like that. But yeah, he admitted that. So yes, let's interview. Let Donald Trump sit for an interview. Yes, let Melania sit for an interview. It's basically a distraction. You're trying to protect somebody who we know is guilty and trying to find someone to pin this on. And you can't do that. So when everybody is gang up on you, you know there's something wrong. But will the Senate and the Congress finally have balls here telling Noem to resign or be impeached? Will they actually do that this time? Or will they let her continue running an agency And without anything, will they continue? Will they finally decide enough is enough? Will yesterday's hearing letting the senators know enough is enough? We are going to impeach you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Is that what's going to happen? And what will happen with Howard Lutnick? Who knows? Who knows? But finally, something is going on. Something. America is going to shit. And we only have one person to blame for that, Donald Trump. The buck stops with him. And they all have to go. Him, Pete Hesketh, Pam Bondi, Howard Lutnick, Kristi, Noem, Marco Rubio. They all have to go. And with the midterm elections just right around the corner, we can see now that people are getting fed up. And that we see a lot of MAGites turning against Trump and regretting that they ever voted for him. And they're seeing who he really is. And not only that, a lot of them are starting to vote blue. And Donald Trump has no one to blame but himself. And I can understand why the Democrats want reforms on DHS. So you can blame the Democrats for the shutdown all you want. And you can complain that they don't want to fund VHS. But you're only telling half the truth. They didn't say they didn't, but you're only lying. They didn't say they didn't want to fund DHS. They said they will fund DHS, but they want reforms to fix this. Because under Kristi Noem, DHS has lost all credibility. And DHS only came into existence after 9/11. After 9/11. And nobody had a problem with Homeland Security. Nobody had a problem with their credibility until Noah came along. And as I keep saying, anything that Trump touches dies. And that's exactly what's happening here. So, be mindful and believe the opposite of what Trump says. We're in a war that nobody wants, that nobody asked for, and that nobody seems to know what the hell is going on, why we're at war. But hopefully now, after these hearings, the Republicans seem to be getting a spine in the Senate. And hopefully we'll start seeing some action. Because right now, the United States of America is not the one that was created 250 years ago. But now it's become more of Trump's America, and we can't have that. So let's just all sit back, let's relax, let's understand the facts, and let's try to fix this. Coming to the midterms, let's vote blue. Let's get the House and the Senate back under Democratic control so that we can hold every single one of these bozos, these incompetent morons, accountable.